Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Suspects and Spirits, and I'm your host, Taylor Seraphin. And I hope that you are all having a better day than I'm having. Oh, you guys ever have one of those days? Just one of those days. And I can't really get into all the details, but just know I didn't go to jail today, and that's fantastic. I kept my opinions to myself. So I hope you're all having a great day. Sorry to start the podcast on that note, but man, it's been a day. All the things are happening at once, everything everywhere all at once. That is my life. I respect boundaries, when people cross those boundaries, it's really not okay. It really kind of pisses me off. So don't cross people's boundaries. They say no, no means no. They say stop, stop means stop. It's really like very simple. We teach preschoolers this stuff, you guys. Not hard, not hard at all. But some people just don't get it. And one day I'm going to lose it. But today is not that day. Stay tuned, though. It could happen. Anywho, I can at least say that I am better person than the woman we are talking about today. I'm not going to talk about anything else. I'm just going to jump right into this story because it is a long one. This is a long one, you guys, and it's intense. This lady, oh my, she's this lady killer, and I don't mean a good-looking man. Definitely not that kind of lady killer. This is a woman who was so deranged, so terrible that the men who worked on this case, like the investigators, everybody, they were forever changed after this, after what this woman did, because it was just so incredibly terrible. So, who is this woman? Her name was Katherine Knight. Katherine Knight's life began on October 24th, 1955, making her a Scorpio. Nothing against Scorpios. Many of my friends are Scorpios. I love them. They're like the pit bull of the zodiac, a little misunderstood, but really deep down, wonderful people with a lot of deep emotion. Like they're really actually awesome people. They're just a little intense. They're a little intense, but that's okay. We love them. Katherine Knight, though, Scorpios don't claim her. They don't claim her. She's on another level, and you will see. So she was born October 24th, 1955 in Tenterfield, New South Wales. This is an isolated corner of Australia where small towns often carry big secrets like Gretchen Wiener's hair. Catherine was born into a family that was already very, very dysfunctional. I mean, dysfunctional does not even begin to cover this family. It was quite thick with turmoil and the kind of household where instability wasn't an exception, but more of a daily rhythm. Long before Catherine entered the world, the roots of the dysfunction had already taken hold. Her mother, Barbara, had been married to a pig farmer named Jack Rowan. Together, they lived in Aberdeen, which is a tiny community in the Hunter Valley region, known almost exclusively for its slaughterhouses. With only a couple thousand residents, Aberdeen revolved around meat processing. So families, they passed these jobs down kind of like heirlooms. And the sights and smells of the industrial butchery were just woven into everyday life. Barbara and Jack had 4 children, but their marriage was eroded by Jack's constant drinking and gambling. And that strain became the doorway for Barbara to begin an affair with one of Jack's coworkers. Not good. And this coworker, his name was Ken Knight. Ken Knight worked with him at the slaughterhouse, and he was considered a very close family friend, which made this even worse. It was a betrayal that detonated the family structure and set the stage for one of Australia's most horrifying criminal histories. So, Catherine's mother, Barbara, she eventually had 4 additional children with Ken Knight, including twin girls. That would be Catherine and her twin sister, Joy. Sorry. Catherine and Joy. Sorry, it's just funny that her sister's name is Joy. Good thing that wasn't her name. Catherine was the younger twin. When Catherine was 4 years old, her mother's first husband, Jack, he passed away, and 2 of his sons moved in with Barbara and Ken, and the other remaining 2 went to live with their aunt in Sydney. On the surface, it was a very complicated but not entirely uncommon family reshuffling. These things, they do happen, and sometimes siblings choose to live in different homes. But beneath the surface was a level of violence and depravity that would just completely shape Catherine in irreversible ways. Ken Knight, the man who would become Catherine's father figure, was an alcoholic whose temper ran unchecked quite often. He routinely beat her mother, Barbara, leaving her swollen and bruised. And these assaults didn't happen behind closed doors. No, no. Unfortunately, they unfolded in full view of the children. The kids eventually stopped asking questions about their mother's injuries. Violence just became like background noise of the household, which is extremely sad and very fucked up. And the abuse didn't end there. He was also known to sexually assault Barbara quite regularly and sometimes multiple times a day, and again, often in front of the children, which is what a disgusting individual. Catherine and her siblings grew up witnessing just a horrifying fusion of sex and violence. This was an environment where brutality was just normalized and intimacy was twisted into something predatory. Catherine would later report that she was also sexually abused by her half brothers until around age 11. Now, it's worth noting that not every detail could be fully verified when it came to the sexual abuse of Catherine, but psychiatrists did accept these claims because other family members confirmed them. So some people said, they didn't happen. And her psychiatrists were like, yeah, actually, these other family members said it did. So really just terrible all around. You guys, think of the absolute worst family dynamic you can possibly imagine. And that was Catherine's family. Just awful. And Barbara didn't really make it any better. She wasn't exactly Mother of the Year. She was traumatized herself and she coped in deeply unhealthy ways. She frequently vented to her own children about her sexual frustrations and her hatred of men and the graphic details of her marriage. It is even said that one time when Catherine was younger, she confided in her mother about a partner pressuring her into a sexual act that she didn't want to do. And her mother, Barbara, told her to basically just do it. She was like, stop complaining and just get it done. So clearly, great advice. It was the kind of upbringing that didn't just fracture the boundaries, it erased them entirely. A lot of this nature versus nurture comes in here, and we'll get into that. There's definitely part of it was her nature, but the nurture did not help her one bit. Violence followed Catherine into school as well. At Muswell Brook High, she was known as a very volatile loner, a girl who towered physically over many of her peers because she was said to be really, really tall, like I think over 6 feet tall. I could be wrong, but she was really tall. And they said that her moods could turn razor sharp without any warning. Like she could go from 0 to 1,000 in a blink of an eye. She bullied smaller students and could be very aggressively confrontational. Former classmates recalled that if someone crossed her, they risked being attacked and sometimes with a weapon. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's like, holy shit. Like, what? I get mad at people and I tell them what I think, you know? It's not, that's crazy. On one occasion, a teacher was actually forced to defend themselves against Catherine. This wasn't teenage rebellion, you guys. It was early evidence of the ferocity that she had absorbed and learned to wield. Like that was her weapon. And back then, I mean, teachers being attacked by students wasn't really a thing. Unfortunately, now it's just regular everyday stuff. We get to be assaulted by kids 24/7. So that's fun. But back then, this was not very common. And honestly, you guys, it still should not be common because what the fuck? But paradoxically, people also remember that although Catherine could be really, really unhinged, she was also unexpectedly gentle sometimes and very polite in her calmer phases. These abrupt shifts in her mood from, warm and charming to dangerously hostile would follow her throughout her whole life. And much later down the line, after all of this, mental health professionals would diagnose her with borderline personality disorder, which actually makes a lot of sense if you know anything about the disorder. This explains her unstable relationships, her intense emotional swings, profound fear of abandonment, impulsive aggression. People with borderline personality disorder tend to do splitting. They think very black and white terms. They're either very, very angry, flying off the handle, or they're pretty calm and indifferent to things. Now, I am not a professional, and this is in no way saying that people with borderline personality disorder are dangerous. Most of them are not. This alone could not account for the cruelty that she eventually unleashed on the people in her life, and it definitely is not responsible for her crimes that she committed. This is just a personality disorder that she had. It's just part of her diagnosis. But that is not why she did what she did. That is part of just her and her nature. Some people just have that in them. And as experts would later testify, her violence came from something far darker than her diagnosis. So, once again, that does not mean that everyone with that disorder are going to become murderers. That's just not how that works. Catherine ended up leaving school at 16 years old, unable to read or write. She did not do very well in school. And this was not entirely unusual in this town. A lot of teenagers just kind of left school early to join the slaughterhouse workforce. And they were just kind of in school just to kind of like pass the time. Like they were just there because it was what they were supposed to do. And then when they were able to get out, they went and they joined the workforce. Now, Catherine was actually very excited to join the workforce and had always dreamed of working in the slaughterhouse. Me, could not pay me enough, could not do it. You could offer me $1 bajillion and I would say, I'm so sorry. Absolutely not. Nope, not for me. I'm an animal lover. I could never hurt an animal in any way. My husband used to be like, "Oh, why didn't you go to veterinary school? You love animals." I was like, I don't think I could put an animal down. Like I couldn't do it. I will watch 1,000 true crime documentaries in one weekend and be like, "Oh yeah, he fucking ate that person." And, but you kill a dog in a movie or hurt a cat or a horse dies or something, I am in full tears, full-blown tears, can't do it. People suck. But like, what did the animal do? You know? I can't. I can't do it, you guys. So Catherine did not feel the same. And this may have been what we like to call a red flag. But apparently, this was her dream job. And she actually tried out for a job at the abattoir and initially failed. I don't really know. I don't really know how you fail that initially. But eventually, she secured a position that she would describe as her, dream job. And in 1974, at 18 years old, she was placed in what workers called the awful room. So this is not awful like AWFUL, not like, oh, that's awful. This is awful like awful meat, OFFAL. Okay. She scraped organs, marrow, and blood from carcasses. So that that was her dream, and she got it. She loved it. It was quite grisly, but she excelled very quickly, especially when she began watching and then later participating in the killing process. I think it takes a very particular person to do this job. I respect people who work in slaughterhouses. I will eat meat. Okay, I could just never kill an animal. I'll eat meat all day long. I love bacon. Okay, but I I just personally could never do it. Now, I know there are plenty of people who love animals that will also work in a slaughterhouse because they also know that it's food, right? So I get it. Okay. And it's not just me who is unsettled by the way she behaved. Her coworkers who also worked in this slaughterhouse were just as concerned with her interest in the butchery. It was the enthusiasm that she showed. She would stand near the line observing pigs as their throats were cut. Like she just wanted to go watch that happen. She would linger as their bodies convulsed and then bled out. Like it gave her some kind of joy. When she was eventually promoted and allowed to slaughter animals herself, she developed a very disturbing ritual. Instead of administering a very quick, humane kill like you're supposed to do, she would slice an artery and then watch the animals die slowly and methodically as though the suffering just fascinated her, which is disgusting. I'm sorry, if you're going to kill an animal in order to eat it, make it quick, make it humane. There's reasons that they do that. And she was not about it. She enjoyed watching them suffer, which is fucking awful. And it was here that she gained her first set of professional knives, a tool that she would just grow to cherish. She loved them. She kept them polished, sharp, and displayed above her bed like trophies. There's just so many reasons to be concerned here. So she would hang her knives above her bed, claiming it made her feel safer, knowing that they're always within reach. And look, being a female, maybe living by herself, I can't recall. I get it. You want a weapon, right? You want a weapon within reach. I got a Louisville Slugger that I have. I'll smack the shit out of somebody who comes into my house. Never in a bajillion years would I keep knives above my bed. Like what? Just weird. Anyways, now Catherine wasn't just, a big woman who was very aggressive. She also had a lot of physical strength, and her coworkers spoke about this quite often. Catherine, she was a really tall, thick boned lady, and she was extremely powerful. Like her hands were huge. They were said to be like very, masculine, very heavy hands, and that she could manhandle livestock with the ease of somebody built for labor. It was a strength that made her very intimidating and later on very deadly. A pattern of violent relationships, each one worse than the last, would unfold. Catherine had multiple partners who would just be completely drawn into her chaos. They experienced the same cycle of intense affection, abrupt rage, manipulation, explosive violence, and then sudden sweetness. So, kind of causing a whirlwind of emotion like, oh my gosh, this woman is insane. And then, oh, but she's so sweet. So, all of them, suffering from this emotional whiplash, just were so confused. Now, knowing eventually that she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, this makes sense, right? But in the moment, if you didn't know that somebody had that, it would be very off-putting. But somehow, she kept getting these guys. These guys were drawn to her for whatever reason. She could pull people back in after even the most horrifying outbursts. It wasn't charm necessarily, it was just psychological gravity, like pulling them back in. I've never personally had to deal with that level, but I think most of us have had a partner or two in the past who have displayed some really toxic behaviors and then they switch on the sweetness and you're like, "Oh, but they love me." Like it's that trauma bond. They trauma bond the shit out of you. So Catherine was just trauma bonding all of these men. And by the time she met David Stanford Kellett in the early 1970s while working at the slaughterhouse, this little, cycle of manipulation was pretty much just a part of her. Like it was just how she functioned. David was known around Aberdeen as a very hard drinker and a brawler. He was a man who partied too much, but he was not a mean man. He was not cruel. So he would drink and, get into some brawls at the bar or whatever, but he wasn't a mean guy. People who knew him said that he was generally really kind-hearted and good-natured and more likely to take a punch than throw one, which kind of made me laugh. Like he would get himself into situations and then get punched in the face and be like, "Oh man, I shouldn't have said that." I know they're not Southern, they're Australian. So he was like, "Oh, sorry, mate, shouldn't have said that." But that was David, just kind of a Ferdinand, I guess. He looked rough and tough, but he really wasn't. For someone like Catherine, though, who needed partners that she could dominate, he was a very easy target. Their relationship escalated rather quickly, and although they were both just 18 at the time, Catherine pushed for marriage almost immediately. She wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to marry you, or one day when we get married, or hey, these are the kinds of rings that I like. No, no, no. Catherine was not subtle. Nothing about Catherine was subtle. David later described the wedding as rushed and chaotic, the kind of event where he barely remembered agreeing to it. And what became clear from the beginning was that Catherine intended to control every inch of this relationship. I mean, after all, she didn't just suggest, like, hey, we should get married one day. She literally told this guy, I'm going to marry you. We're getting married. And he was like, oh, all right then. Whatever you say. So, how romantic, right? They got married. And it was a very, very intense marriage. Violence arrived on the very first night of the wedding, in fact. After they consummated the marriage, Catherine became very enraged, so mad that he had fallen asleep too soon. And then she attacked him. She attacked him on their wedding night. She was like, you could only do it 3 times, and I wanted to do it like 5 times. Like, lady, calm down. First of all, the fact that you're not too tired on your wedding night because it is such a chaotic day to even do it once. Okay. What do you mean 3 times? Girl, relax. So this was the beginning of quite a pattern for them. Any disappointment, any moment where Catherine felt ignored, the violence would erupt like Vesuvius. Okay. She was just a ticking time bomb. Now, David, bless his heart, he tried to rationalize it, telling himself that her moods would pass, but her aggression just steadily grew more and more unpredictable. Catherine loved to dominate him physically and emotionally. If David drank too much at the pub, or even if he didn't, she punished him just for whatever she wanted, really. She was like, you left a fork on the table? Fuck you. Like, you're the worst. I can't believe I married you. Now I'm going to beat the shit out of you. If he came home even a few minutes later than she expected, she lashed out. Once he returned late from a darts competition, I don't even know what that is. Like darts, I guess you play darts at a bar. They have competitions. I don't know. So he came home late from a darts competition. And you know what she did? She wasn't like, hey, honey, where have you been? Oh, no, no. For Catherine, that wasn't enough. This woman set his clothes on fire and struck him in the skull with a frying pan so violently he collapsed at a neighbor's house and required treatment for a severe head fracture. A frying pan. Is this Tangled? Are we watching Rapunzel smack Flynn Rider? Like, what do you mean? You hit someone in the head with a frying pan. People do that in real life? That's crazy. I've never once hit my husband in the head with a frying pan. So the police wanted to charge her, obviously, but Catherine somehow manipulated David into withdrawing the complaint. This was a pattern that would repeat with every single man who came after David. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, well, at least there are no children involved, I'm so sorry. You would be wrong because they ended up having a daughter. Her name was Melissa. After their daughter Melissa was born, the instability actually escalated into just outright danger, child endangerment. Guys, this story, I don't know what else to tell you. It gets worse. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So here we go. Finally, at one point, David said, I've had enough. And he left Catherine for another woman. As you can imagine, with Catherine's abandonment issues, clearly this did not go well. This abandonment triggered one of Catherine's darkest episodes. And I need to warn you guys right now, there is going to be more talk of child abuse. So I'm very, very sorry. It is part of the story, and it goes to show just how absolutely fucking crazy this woman is. So I'm sorry, but it's part of the story. Catherine spiraled into such a rage that she threatened their newborn their newborn baby and swung her around by her ankles, like swung her in the air by her ankles. The image of that makes me actually physically sick to my stomach. Like she is fucking nuts. She is a demon. Like she is the worst fucking person. Huh. And then days later, after doing that, she was seen pushing the stroller of her infant child down the street, ramming it into fences and poles with Melissa inside of it, with the baby inside. Now, obviously, when people saw this happening, they were like, oh my God, like, holy shit, she's going to hurt her child. So people did intervene, thank God. And she was briefly committed to a psychiatric facility, but then she was released almost immediately and her baby was returned to her. They were like, here you go. Here's your baby back that you swung by the ankles and then rammed into fences and poles. What? The system here just absolutely, completely failed this child catastrophically. And the consequences would echo through the lives of everybody she touched. Every single person that Katherine met or the children that she had, every single one of them, the trauma that she created for these people is unreal. Unreal. Ugh. She is just a really awful human. Like worst of the worst. Can't stand this bitch. This has nothing to do with borderline personality or, a traumatic childhood. Plenty of people go through shit and plenty of people have mental health problems. They don't swing their kids around by their fucking ankles or ram them into things. Like, what is wrong with you? Now, I wish I could tell you it was over, but it gets worse. So, shortly after they were like, here you go, here's your baby back, you wonderful mother, Katherine placed that same baby, 2-month-old Melissa, not up for adoption. No. She placed her on railroad tracks minutes before a train was scheduled to pass. The rage I feel in my body for her children. Like, children, multiple children. Why? Why would you give her baby back to her? What the fuck? Clearly, Katherine was unwell, okay? Her intention was unmistakable. Now, thankfully, by sheer luck, an elderly man was scavenging near the tracks and he discovered the infant and saved her life. That man saved Melissa's life. Just by chance, he was out there. And while that was happening, Katherine walked into town, armed herself with an axe, and began threatening pedestrians. Like, just started throwing an axe around. Was like, I'm gonna kill you with her fucking axe. While her infant was on railroad tracks. She was so mentally unwell, like so unstable. And they couldn't keep her in these psychiatric facilities. She was committed again after this. And then she was released again, almost like immediately. And she faced no charges. None, you guys. She didn't get charged with child endangerment. She didn't get charged with wielding a fucking axe in front of pedestrians' faces. Like, I know it was the 70s, but this is too much. This is too much. And this is all because she was just enraged that David had left her. She was acting out because she didn't get what she wanted. The quote, love of her life, one of them, was just done. He was done with her. And she decided that this was the best way possible to react. So, and within days of this happening, she escalated even further. She took knives, scissors, and medical bandages to the home of a teenage coworker's family and then lied to them about her baby being ill and then attacked them when they arrived to help her. She held this family hostage, you guys, searching for the gun that she normally kept hidden in the yard, unaware that her father had removed it earlier out of fear that she would hurt someone. Her family was aware that she was this crazy, and her dad moved it because he was like, I don't want Catherine having access to guns. Gee, what a thought. So, in a terrifying feat of strength, she tore a massive blade off of a tractor mounted mower. She she tore a blade with her bare hands off of a tractor mounted mower and used it to hack through the door while still holding her own infant. She was holding Melissa this whole time. And only thing that could stop her was a police intervention. And once again, guess what, you guys? She avoided charges. She was released rather quickly. Again, I say, oh, what the fuck? Because what do you mean? What do you mean? She was just let go. They weren't like, hey, ma'am, you actually can't hold a teenage coworker's family hostage and lie to them about your baby being ill and then hack through the door with your baby in your arms after putting it on railroad tracks, swinging it by its ankles, and ramming it into things. What? So, anyways, David, he heard about this mental unraveling and he returned to Aberdeen. He was abandoning his new life and his new partner to go support Catherine. He was like, Catherine really needs me right now. No, 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 David. Your child needs you. Melissa needs you. Catherine can kiss my ass. She can kick rocks. But he decided, no, I need to go support Catherine. And guys, even he couldn't fully explain why he came back. For sure, it was trauma bonding. It was fear. It was manipulation. It was the twisted dynamic that Catherine cultivated in every relationship she had. He and Catherine reunited and had yet another baby. Because, yes, that's exactly what this situation needs, more kids. And they lived through several more years of violence until Catherine abruptly decided that she was just done. She was done with them. She was like, I'm kind of bored now. And in 1984, she ended the relationship herself. She was like, bye, David. See you later. So just, she's really a gem. Really a gem. After leaving David, Catherine returned to the slaughterhouse and injured her own back on the job. I said that correctly. She did not get hurt on the job. As an intentional act, according to someone who knew her, she intentionally hurt her back so that she could receive disability payments. Unreal. What? The government, she's all workman's comp, baby. Well, she's Australian, so she's all workman's comp, mate. The government placed her in subsidized housing in Aberdeen, and her reputation for violence was very well known. People knew Catherine at this point. They were scared of her. But her ability to switch into a charming domestic persona kept her from losing that social support. So even though she was fucking insane, people supported her. And as soon as she cut ties with one man, like David, her ex-husband, she just had another one kind of fall into her lap. They got sucked into her orbit. And in 1986, just 2 years after ending the relationship with David Kellett, she began another relationship with another man named David. His name was David Saunders. He was a mild, soft-spoken minor, not a child, okay, a minor, like, hi-ho, hi-ho, a minor. He was known for his gentle nature and his love for animals. So this David, he moved in with her after a few months, and he actually kept his old apartment, like, just in case, which I think is kind of a sign that even very early on, something kind of fell off with her. So he was like, just in case this doesn't work out, I'm going to keep my own place. And Catherine hated this. She hated it. Her jealousy just took over. If he spent time at his old place, she assumed he was cheating. Like, obviously, duh, right? Like, he couldn't just be there to get away from you. He's clearly he's cheating. So she threw him out repeatedly. Like, no proof of cheating at all. She was just like, oh my God, he's at his house. He hates me, which he probably did. So she would throw him out only to just lure him back in with apologies and emotional manipulation. She was like, I hate you, leave. I love you, come back. And every single time he did, he came back. It is just a terrible, vicious cycle. And of course, that cycle soon turned violent because Catherine might be a lot of things, but inconsistency is not one of them when it comes to violence. I don't know why I said it like I'm a newsie, but I did. Sanders often showed up to work with bruises and cuts, and she beat him quite extensively. She stabbed him once and then fractured his ribs. hmm So, just normal stuff, I guess. Ugh. Um, so this David, his breaking point should have come early, but it didn't, not even when Catherine committed what many consider one of the most disturbing acts before the crimes yet to come. Okay, I'm going to struggle to get through this part. This part of the story fucking enrages me. I can't handle kids being hurt, and I can't handle animals being hurt. So, just a trigger warning. There's going to be some animal cruelty here, and it does not have to do with the slaughterhouse. This part is really, really terrible. So if you want to skip forward, please do so. Maybe fast forward about a minute, okay, just to be safe. So this disturbing act, it happened during an argument in 1987. Her and David were fighting, and she decided she was going to walk outside, grab David's 8-week-old dingo puppy, and killed it in front of him, slit its throat in front of him as a warning. Evil bitch. Like, I don't use that word lightly. What the hell is wrong with you? This would have sent me over the edge. This would have, if I don't care what kind of trauma bond you have on me, you hurt my puppy, you hurt my dog, I'ma hurt you. What the hell is wrong with this lady? This was clearly a demonstration of dominance over David. It was very cold, very deliberate, and designed to show him what she believed she had the power to do. And even then, Saunders stayed. He stayed. He was trauma bonded to her on a level I will never understand. Never. He was cornered and convinced that she would find him anywhere he went, which, look, I get that there is a level of trauma bonding that occurs in some people to where it's almost irreversible. Like they can't get out. I get that. Okay, I'm just saying for me personally, don't fuck with my dog. Like I would end you. You hurt my kids, you hurt my dog. Hell no. Hell no. This is just so incredibly sad. Like, it is so sad that she had such power over these men. And people don't understand in these situations that, like, the partner is genuinely terrified. Like, they're scared to leave. They think they are going to die. And honestly, these men had every reason to believe that. Because if you know anything about this story, then you know how it ends. Thankfully, this David, he did get out of it. Okay, he did eventually get out of the relationship, but not soon enough. Okay, because they ended up having a daughter. She had another child. Stop letting this woman have kids. So after Catherine gave birth to their daughter in 1988, the violence once again escalated. She struck David Saunders in the face with an iron. Okay, first it was a frying pan. Now she's just hitting people with irons, apparently. She stabbed him with scissors. She destroyed his clothing. She shattered his belongings, and she staged a suicide attempt to manipulate him emotionally. Saunders eventually fled, and he went into hiding for months. Months. Desperate to protect himself, he just disappeared from her life entirely, something very few men have been able to do. So, because this David also left, he'd had enough of her shit, she retaliated by going to the police and falsely claiming that she feared him, resulting in a restraining order placed against him. This was yet another example of how she weaponized the system against her victims. So David Saunders, he just stayed hidden for years. He just stayed out of sight. And honestly, I don't really blame him. I just feel bad for the kids involved. So if you're wondering why neither of these men so far have taken the children and left with the children, this is why. Okay. It was probably damn near impossible for them to get custody of these kids. And then with Catherine doing things like getting restraining orders against them, saying that she feared them, especially during these times, they likely just couldn't. So Saunders disappeared for years, but Catherine wasn't done. She was like, you know what? I'm going to get me a new man. And that's unfortunately exactly what she did. She found someone new. In 1990, she began a relationship with John Chillingworth, another slaughterhouse worker. And within weeks, guess what? She became pregnant again. Yep. A pattern that repeated just relentlessly. This woman, someone give her some fucking birth control. Oh my God. So this time they had a son in 1991. She and John, had a baby, but she refused to let him move into the home that she inherited with her mother. She was like, nope, that's mine. It's my house, and I decorate it the way I want with animal skins, antlers, traps, machetes, old farm tools, and various remains of creatures that I hunted or butchered. And you guys, I wish that was a joke. I really wish what I just said was a joke. That's actually how she decorated that house. Now, it's one thing to, go hunting. You like hunting. Maybe you put a deer head up on the wall, whatever. Do your thing. Okay. I don't care. But knowing what this woman did and hearing how she decorated this house, hindsight's 2020. Just another red flag. The house resembled a very, very gross museum, just floor to ceiling artifacts of death and violence displayed like trophies. Very kind of Ed Geiny. She did it again. Her obsession with dead animals was described by a German psychiatrist as necrophilius. I might be saying that wrong, but it's not like we all know what necrophilia is. Okay, that's not what this was. She didn't have like a sexual desire for the dead things. She more had a compulsion to possess and control dead things. So she didn't want to do things with them. She just wanted to control them, which is also fucking bizarre. Her relationship with John Chillingworth lasted 3 years, ending when she destroyed his dentures in a rage. She just said, I'm going to destroy these. You don't need these anymore. But the relationship's collapse wasn't because of that. It was actually because Catherine's attention had already shifted to another man, a man whose fate would overshadow every single violent episode that came before him. And that man was John Price. So if you've lost track, this is relationship number 4. The first 3 men were lucky enough to get away. Unfortunately, the rest of this story is going to get even darker. So here we go. John Charles Thomas Price was known by everyone as Pricey. He entered Katherine Knight's life in the mid-1990s. He was born in 1955, the same year as Katherine, and he had built a reputation as a very dependable, easygoing man who worked hard, and he loved his children fiercely. Friends described him as a very solid, well-liked guy, the kind of person who could walk into any pub in Aberdeen and immediately be welcomed and just made friends wherever he went. He had 3 children with his ex-wife, Colleen, and they actually had a surprisingly amicable separation. So they were estranged, but there's no animosity between them really. Their oldest daughter stayed with Colleen, and the 2 others who were teenagers at the time, they lived with John. By the time Katherine met John Price, he was well known in the community, and everyone said he was a really gentle man who never raised his voice unless it was absolutely necessary. He just He wasn't a yeller. He wasn't an aggressive person. Even his ex-wife, Colleen, who had really no reason to defend him, like, you know, they were exes. She openly said that he was a kind, patient father who never laid a hand on her in anger, that he was really very well respected. She respected him enough to let him keep the home after they separated. And although they lived apart, the affection between them never really disappeared. She always had love for him because that was the father of her children. Catherine knew his reputation and she knew that he was not a violent man, and that made him the perfect target for her once again. Pricey was aware of her past, but like the men before him, he was like, I can handle it. I can change her. And normally, I'm saying this to women about men. Men are not fucking babies. You can't change them. They don't need a diaper change. Okay. But this time I'm saying it to you men. If a woman is this unhinged, you can't change her either. Okay. You can't change anyone. Someone has to be willing to change on their own to actually make changes. And when it comes to shit like this, ain't no way, baby. Ain't no way. He believed that he was stronger and more grounded and that he could calm the storm that she carried. It was the same trap that every single partner of hers fell into. The illusion that love or patience could neutralize the vitality in her. I'm here to tell you right now, no, you cannot. It takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of hard work and inner work and therapy and possibly even medication to help somebody change that drastically. But Catherine was like, she was stoked. She had another guy that she could boss around. And she moved into his home in 1995. And at first, the relationship appeared pretty stable, her typical cycle. His children, though, they were not fond of Catherine and they were very cautious around her unpredictable moods. But they tried to tolerate the situation for their father's sake. They were like, we love dad, let's just, we're teenagers. We're just going to get through this. We'll be 18 soon, whatever. But if dad's happy, that's all that matters. They had no idea how badly this would escalate and how could they? They were children. They were kids. So they stuck it out. Catherine enjoyed the financial security that Price offered. He worked in the local mines and he earned really good money. And his home was very well kept. It was very comfortable and, a significant step above the environment that she was used to. Remember, she didn't really even have a great education. She couldn't read or write when she graduated. She grew up in a very dysfunctional and poor household. So to her, this was like, living the good life. But as with all of Catherine's relationships, the honeymoon period did not last very long. Their arguments turned into explosive confrontations, and her jealousy intensified, particularly over the fact that Price refused to marry her. He was like, no, I don't want to get married. And she despised that he had not officially divorced his ex-wife yet. And she also despised that he put his property and his assets into his children's names. Really, just any indication that she was not the absolute center of his life. She was like, oh my God, my life is over. She thought she truly was entitled to all of that. I'm like, no, girl, no. Those are his kids. They're entitled to his assets. He hasn't fully divorced his ex-wife yet. Okay, then don't rush into the relationship. How about that? How about that? All right. Just no. Catherine did not think anything through ever. Catherine did not ever think about anyone but herself, and her resentment began festering into something much more vindictive. One night in 1998, after an especially heated argument, Catherine would commit one of the most calculated acts of sabotage that Price had ever experienced. Now, Catherine was known for doing some dirty work against people that she had issues with, but this went beyond. Catherine went into Pricey's shed and she filmed some items that he had salvaged from the garbage at work. They were expired medical kits that the company had discarded, and she sent footage of this to his employer. And even though the items were technically trash, the company treated the matter as theft, like he had stolen it. And Price was actually fired from the job that he'd held for 17 years. He lost his pension. He lost his financial stability. He lost the part of his identity tied to providing for his family. All of it because of Katherine. And when he came home and realized what she had done, he threw her out immediately. But you know Katherine, you know her. She did not leave his life. She refused. She just stuck around like a nasty ass barnacle. A few months later, Price, who was lonely, traumatized, and still somewhat emotionally entangled with her, he ended up letting her back into the relationship. Now, this time he did refuse to let her move in. He said, "No, you're not moving in here." But even that line in the sand wasn't enough to create like a true distance between them when re-navigating this relationship. Katherine re-entered pretty aggressively, and the violence escalated once again. The fights grew more frequent and more dangerous. And most of John Price's friends, they didn't want to be around him anymore. They stopped visiting. They were terrified of Katherine. They were too frightened and honestly exhausted by the constant tension between the two of them. They knew Katherine's pattern. They knew what she had done to the men before him, and they warned him outright that if he stayed, something terrible was going to happen to him. And Price knew it too. He admitted to coworkers that he feared for his life, but he also feared that she would hurt his children if he left for good, which isn't that terrible? Like, this woman is on another level. So, meanwhile, Katherine's rage became more transparent. And one night during a fight, she told Price's friend that she would never allow Price to leave the relationship alive. Like, she actually said that. She said, "No, he will not leave this relationship alive." She told her brothers months earlier that she planned to kill Price and claim insanity, believing that she could convince authorities that she had lost control and just completely escape consequences. She said it without fear, without hesitation, and her intent had already been forming long before what eventually happened. Price's fear grew very, very intense. And one night, after a very violent outburst of hers, he actually ran to a neighbor's house for protection. A grown man ran to his neighbors for protection. He told people that he was terrified of her. He genuinely believed that she would kill him. And he would later admit to one of her former partners, David Kellett, remember him? He admitted to him that he felt trapped and that he wanted to leave, but he was too frightened to even attempt it. Katherine had just moved through her life like a storm. This woman, just a fucking tornado of chaos, damaging everyone who came near her. But with John Price, the storm gathered into something far more catastrophic. Her violence, her history, her appetite for control, and her need for domination were all converging toward one single inevitable moment. And I say inevitable because she was escalating. Something bad was going to happen. And on February 29th of 2000, that moment finally arrived. On this day, Katherine was acting very, very strange. She visited multiple family members, retrieving a video camera that she had previously left at her sister's home. She went to her daughter Natasha's house, making eerie comments on camera that sounded almost like farewells a little bit. And she recorded herself playing with Natasha's baby, which was weird because she didn't do that. It was almost as though she was documenting memories for posterity. She even took her daughter out for dinner. Like, she never did that. It was a very, very, very rare thing. for her to even do anything nice for her daughter. And she insisted that evening was just special. She was like, oh, it's just a special night. Her children later said that they felt a strange heaviness around her that day, like she was tying up loose ends. And Catherine actually asked Natasha to keep her youngest children overnight, even though they didn't have clean clothes or school supplies with them. She was just like, hey, keep my kids tonight, okay? And Natasha was like, uh, all right, okay then. Catherine wanted everyone out of the house. She needed privacy and she needed control. She was preparing for something, and John Price sensed it too. That morning, on his way to work, he stopped at the courthouse in Scone and he actually filed a restraining order against Catherine in an attempt to protect both himself and his children. At his job later that day, he told coworkers, without wavering, that if he didn't return to work the next morning, it would be because Katherine Knight had killed him. They begged him not to go home. They were like, dude, do not go back to that house. Like, don't go there. But he told them he had no choice. He believed she would go after his kids if he didn't, at the very least, show up at home. So that night, he returned to his house alone, and Catherine had already relocated her children and arranged for Price's children to stay elsewhere as well. Price spent the evening with his neighbors, likely, trying to delay returning home. And eventually he went home around 11 p.m. He locked the doors, turned off the lights, and he went to bed. Catherine was actually nowhere in sight. So at this point, he was like, maybe I've avoided some kind of conflict, but she was coming. While Price slept inside his home, Catherine was preparing for the final escalation of a lifetime of violence. After dropping her children off with family, she stopped at a secondhand store and bought a piece of black lingerie. Sorry. She bought lingerie from a thrift store. Just so gross. That's some nasty undies. She got some really cheap, really nasty, intimate wear. And she arrived at Price's house sometime later, letting herself in quietly, and then just sat in the living room watching television as though nothing were unusual. Then she showered, climbed into his bed, and she woke him up. What happened next followed a deeply familiar pattern. They had sex, a final manipulated intimacy that Catherine would later weaponize as proof of sanity and intention. Once Price fell asleep, she retrieved the knives that she always kept close, because she loved her knives. Now remember, she had spent decades honing her skills in slaughterhouses, teaching herself how to cut, how to carve, and how to dismantle bodies with speed and precision. Price was unconscious and vulnerable, and without hesitation, she attacked him. The first stab wound woke him up, and what followed was a frantic, desperate attempt to escape. Blood evidence showed that he stumbled from the bed, clutching at the walls and furniture as he tried to flee the onslaught. He made it into the hallway, leaving a trail of smeared handprints as he searched for the light and for clarity. He moved toward the front door and managed to get it open, and then stepped outside. But he didn't get far. The blood pooled on the doorstep, indicating that he had collapsed there, and Catherine likely dragged him back inside while continuing to stab him. Her rage was just completely frenzied and merciless, and by the time he had passed away, Price had been stabbed 37 times. He had wounds to the front and the back of him, deep enough to pierce his lungs, liver, stomach, pancreas, colon, kidneys, and even his aorta, which, once that's punctured, it's over. Like, there's no coming back. The attack was not quick at all. It was not clean, and it was personal and sustained. A pool of blood, roughly 6 feet long, formed in the hallway. And when investigators arrived hours later, the blood still had not fully coagulated. Like it was a lot, you guys. But Catherine, she still was not finished with Pricey. After killing him, she calmly showered, changed into clean clothes, and retrieved his wallet. She then drove to an ATM in a nearby town and withdrew $1,000 using his card and then returned home. That one single act proved her state of mind, that she was oriented, she was aware, and she was calculating her movements. So it undercut any future claim that she had no control over herself that night, because she tried to claim insanity because of this. But that clearly shows that she knew what she was doing. Back at the house, she began part of the crime that would horrify even the most seasoned forensic professionals in Australia or just anywhere ever. This is where it gets really, really awful. Like it's already been really awful. I'm sorry, but it gets worse. Using her slaughterhouse experience, she methodically skinned Price's body in one complete piece. You guys, she skinned him like all in one piece. I can't even wrap my head around it. Apparently, the precision was so exact that during the autopsy, a mortician was able to sew the skin back onto the body in a single reconstruction. She removed everything. She removed his face, his scalp, his ears, his neck, torso, arms, legs, everything. So precisely. Disgustingly precise. The only piece she intentionally left behind was a small square of skin containing the scar from a wound that she had inflicted on him months earlier. Then she hung his entire skin completely intact. Remember, she did it one complete piece. She hung it on a hook in the entryway of the home, like a grotesque tapestry, like a curtain, a human skin curtain. Officers who later encountered this described it as one of the most disturbing sights of their entire careers. Many were forced to take extended psychological leave after witnessing this scene. Can you even, I can't even say, can you imagine? I don't want you to imagine it. Don't imagine it. Get that out of your head. You guys, when I say she is one of the worst humans on this planet, she is the worst. She is an actual demon. And I'm so sorry to say, she did not stop there. So after she skinned him completely, she decapitated him and then placed his head into a pot on the stove, adding vegetables like zucchini and squash and cabbage and pumpkin and beetroot. She simmered it like a slow-cooked stew. And then the police later found the pot still warm to the touch. She had sliced portions from his buttocks and cooked them as well. She arranged the meat on 2 dinner plates alongside baked potatoes and then prepared side dishes. She set the table carefully and deliberately, like she was having a beautiful feast. And at each place setting, she placed a name card. 1 name card for each of Price's children. She intended to serve their father to them for dinner. Yeah. Another piece of cooked meat was found discarded in the backyard, and whether she had thrown it to the dog or rejected it for some other reason remains unknown, but it was found out there. And it is worth noting that those name cards she left for the kids, all the little notes and stuff were very misspelled. She was pretty illiterate, so made herself look really fucking stupid. At some point during the night, she also took Price's mutilated, headless body and arranged it in an armchair. She crossed his legs draped one arm over a very large empty soda bottle, and then staged the corpse as though it were resting. Investigators later interpreted this as an act of humiliation, another expression of complete dominance over Price, even in death. And by dawn, Katherine had swallowed a very large quantity of pills, and she was lying in bed in like a comatose state, just completely unconscious. But not so unconscious that she didn't leave behind a very staged evidence implying that she had been wronged or emotionally distraught. When a neighbor noticed that Price's car was still in the driveway that morning, they sensed that something was very, very wrong. And Price had warned his coworkers the previous day that if he didn't show up, it would mean that Katherine had killed him. So obviously, they were all very, very concerned when he failed to arrive at work. His employers then sent someone to check on him. The neighbor and the coworker, they saw blood on the doorstep, and that's when they called the police. The officers forced their way into the home at 8 a.m., and nothing could have prepared them for what they walked into. Price's skin, as I said before, was hung on a hook near the entrance. His decapitated body sat arranged in an unnatural pose. So he was skinned and decapitated, and his skin was hanging in the entryway. And at first, the police were like they didn't even realize what they were walking into. They didn't realize what that skin was. And then it hit them. Some of the police, they were physically sick. And how could you not be? You know, it's a level of disturbing that no one should ever have to witness. And then it got worse because they noticed that the pot on the stove was bubbling with vegetables and also human remains. Then they noticed the 2 plates that were set out for his children and even a note accusing Price of crimes that he never committed. She put that on the table, again spelled incorrectly and dripping with malice. And Katherine Knight, who was covered in none of the blood that saturated the house because she showered and hung out, laid in the bedroom alive and somewhat comatose. Her crime would become one of the most shocking acts of violence in Australian history, not only for its brutality, but for the eerie calm that followed. The scene was so psychologically disturbing that several officers later required therapy and time away from the force, which I think I mentioned before, but it was bad. They couldn't go back to work for a very long time. And some of the men even said that they couldn't eat meat for months afterwards because it was just so horrific. But the horror of the night was only beginning because now the legal system had to grapple with what to do with the woman who was responsible. After police found Katherine Knight comatose but alive, the investigation into the murder of John Price began immediately. The responding officers, many of them veterans of gruesome crime scenes, were shaken to their core. The evidence inside the home made the sequence of events painfully clear. There was no ambiguity. The blood patterns documented Price's desperate attempt to escape. The knife wounds demonstrated the ferocity of the attack. The skin removed from a single precise sheet and hung like a slaughtered animal's hide reflected a level of anatomical skill that only years in abattoirs could produce. The pot on the stove showed not only premeditation, but a chilling level of composure and intention. Katherine had attempted to stage the scene partly as a message, and then also partly as an act of domination, and then also just as a final humiliation towards John Price. The fact that she had methodically cooked parts of his body for his children to consume made the crime just even more disturbing. It was one of the most extreme violations of the human body and familial bonds ever documented in Australia. Her initial attempt to plead guilty to manslaughter was rejected outright. They were like, absolutely not. hell no, this is not manslaughter. The brutality of the crime made it clear that this was not an act of temporary loss of control or insanity. Because remember, she also used his ATM card. She went and she got out $1,000 and then came home. When she was formally charged with murder on March 2nd of 2001, she entered a plea of not guilty and prepared to fight the case. The court understood that the details were so horrific that even a jury selection posed significant challenges. Justice Barry O'Keefe, who oversaw the trial, offered potential jurors the option to be excused due to the nature of the photographic evidence. Several jurors accepted, and some were visibly shaken just by the description of the crime scene. They didn't even see a photo, just by what was said. The list of witnesses, the forensic documentation, and the autopsy findings ended up driving more and more people to withdraw from the jury. It became very obvious that trying this case would not be simple. Amid this mounting tension, Katherine abruptly changed her plea the following day. It was a very sudden turn, one that came after Justice O'Keefe strongly advised her legal team to reconsider their strategy. They were like, look, she's not going to win this, and your strategy sucks, so figure something out. He then ordered a psychiatric evaluation to determine whether she understood the consequences of what a guilty plea meant. And her lawyers had planned to argue that she suffered from amnesia. Sorry. They said she suffered from amnesia and disassociation during the murder. Guys, it's so clear that she did not. So basically, they hoped to portray her as mentally detached from this act, perhaps even unaware of her own behavior. But psychiatrists were like, no, absolutely not. They rejected this narrative entirely. 2 specialists diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder, a condition already kind of suspected for years, but they were emphatic that her disorder did not explain the crime. One forensic psychiatrist stated very clearly that what Katherine did was rooted in her personality and her choices. It was not a symptom of her diagnosis. She was not psychotic when this happened, and she was not delusional. She was not confused. Her acts were deliberate, they were methodical, and they were fully within her awareness. She went as far as to make sure that the kids were out of the house when she did this. That's planning. Okay, she planned this. She had even admitted to her brothers that she wanted to kill him. Like, come on. During the sentencing hearing, forensic pathologist Dr. Timothy Lyons testified about the precision of the skinning. He explained that the removal of the skin was so expert and meticulous that there were no knife marks on the bones. None. The process required steady hands, anatomical understanding, and a remarkably sharp blade. He estimated that the skinning alone would have taken 30 minutes to an hour and very prolonged focused labor. This was not a frenzied act. As he spoke, Katherine unraveled for the very first time in public. She rocked violently in her seat, clicking her teeth, kicking the partition, and she began screaming, forcing officers to remove her from the courtroom and sedate her. It was the only outward display of distress she had shown since the murder. But the court wasn't moved at all. Justice O'Keefe, during the sentencing, delivered one of the most forceful rebukes in Australian legal history. He noted that the profound lack of remorse, the premeditation, the level of cruelty, and the psychological devastation inflicted on both the victim and everyone who witnessed the aftermath made it clear that the murder of John Price went beyond the boundaries of anything even seasoned professionals had ever encountered. He said that the final minutes of Price's life would have been filled with unimaginable terror, and that for Katherine, those minutes were moments of gratification. For those reasons, he imposed the harshest penalty available, which was life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He ordered her file to be permanently marked, never to be released. With that ruling, Katherine Knight became the first woman in Australian history to receive a life sentence with no parole. This was, a historic decision, one that underscored the unprecedented nature of her crime. Years later, though, in 2006, she attempted to appeal the sentence, arguing that it was too severe. I'm sorry, Catherine. You know what's too severe? Skinning your husband and then beheading him and cooking him and trying to feed him to his children. That's pretty fucking severe to me. So shut up. This lady is too much. She is too much for me. And the judges said, yeah, she's too much for us too. They dismissed her request unanimously, stating that the punishment fit not only the crime, but the danger that she posed to society. Katherine Knight remains incarcerated to this day, serving a sentence that was not only deserved, but necessary to ensure that no one else would ever have to face the rage, the manipulation, or the violence that defined her entire life. Her story remains one of the most disturbing examples of domestic violence in modern history. And even now, decades later, the details of what happened inside John Price's home continue to haunt everyone who has ever studied this case. And to this day, those photos, everything from that crime scene, are kept locked away. They will never see the light of day. The officers and everybody involved said that there is no way that they would ever let anybody see the footage from that day because it would forever change the people who saw it. And that is the story of Katherine Knight and John Price. What a fucked up story, right? I mean, we're not here for rainbows and daisies, but yeah, that's probably, I think that may have been one of the worst ones I've done. The eyeball killer, that was a pretty bad one, but this one's just, it's so gross. Like, she was just an evil fucking person. And the fact that people like her exist terrifies me. Ghosts don't scare me. Shit, demons probably don't even scare me at this point. Just actual people are terrifying. Thankfully, she can never get out. So that's good. This judge had a brain and he was like, nope, she is in there forever. But you know what I didn't mention at the beginning was that first guy, David, that she married, the one who she was like, we're going to get married right now. I'm not asking. Her mom had actually told him that he needed to be careful because she would kill him. She was like, "Oh, she'll kill you." She was like, "You better be careful. Don't slight her because she'll come for you." Like, her own mother knew what she was capable of. Her dad hid guns because he was afraid of his own daughter. And I mean, her parents weren't great people. Like, let's be so honest. Terrible upbringing, such a dysfunctional family. But again, that kind of stuff doesn't create a murderer. Like, these stories just baffle me. No one could ever make me that mad to where I would want to skin them. Are you kidding? So, anyways, this has been a long one. That is all I have for you today. Sorry that it was such a rough one, but sometimes we got to cover those too. I mean, this is a true crime podcast, so I don't really know how to segue out of this episode. I hope you guys keep listening and don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Those reviews, they help me a lot, kind of in the process of making this a real thing. So if you could go write a review right now. Go be like, hey, this is a podcast. You should listen to it. Hey, you like dark shit? Come and listen to this podcast. Just go write a review, like anything, but it has to be good. If you have nothing nice to say, don't write anything. Go find a different podcast. But yeah, share the podcast with someone that you think might enjoy it. Share it with your dark and twisties. And as always, remember to trust your lizard brain. Until next time, goodbye.